Hi, everyone. I'd like to quickly recap what we have done on the web and see what kind of learnings we can take from it for the future. So this is how the web started, right? So Sir Tim Berners-Lee at the CERN Institute in Switzerland, in Geneva, put this machine there. And you might see the little sticker down there. The sticker says, "This machine is a server. Do not power it down." So the web could quickly die by just like one button press or like one power outage. So that was an interesting time at the birth of the web. We have very recently celebrated the 30th birthday of the web. So the web is only slightly older than I am, and that's really impressive. And I think this is a fantastic opportunity to sit down and look back at what we've done. And I think it's an amazing feat of engineering and spreading the knowledge globally. So let's start with when it started at 1991. We got HTML 1.0 based on SGML. It gives you a very few things that you can do with it. Very shortly after, we get forms. So like we can no longer just like mark up documents and link them in between each other. We can now also ask for user input and send that data back to the server. Then in 1996, after long discussions, cascading style sheets come around in version 1. So now we can also separate the content, the meaning of our documents from how they look like. We could apply different style sheets. We could make the same content look differently in different ways. And then in 1997, ECMAScript was standardized. So now JavaScript has become a standard in the sense of ECMAScript becoming a standard. It had to be that because they went to the European Computer Manufacturers Association, ECMA in short, and Java is a trademark that they kind of licensed for the name JavaScript, but not everyone had that license. So we had JavaScript, we had JScript, we had other things coming up, all under the umbrella of ECMAScript. And we had so many fantastic ideas. The web constantly evolved. I mean, look at the timeline again. It took like 4 years for HTML 2.0 to come out, 1 more year for CSS, and then 1 more year for ECMAScript to come. So like we were fast-paced, and like everyone was excited, and there was creativity, and there were many people thinking hard and long about how to move the web forward, make the web a better place. And we had fantastic ideas, fantastic, I tell you, such as these lovely things. So they no longer exist in browsers, but Google gives them back to you every now and then. So if you ever wanted to see how annoying HTML could have been back in the days, this is a way to do it. So you can make like text move and blink and whatnot. And then we're like, yeah, but we want to build more complex things. So we came up with the idea of using tables, right? CSS was limited. CSS could only do so much. So how do we do like more complex layouts? Well, you use a table, obviously, right? Tables are giving us cells, and then basically we can have a grid. We just use tables for that. Who here builds layouts in tables these days? That's what I thought. So we had more brilliant ideas. We came up with a fantastic idea of like, yeah, maybe tables aren't great. Maybe we should split the documents and then like assemble a document from other documents. So we came up with frame sets. Fantastic. I built so many websites with frame sets, and I loved it. It's like, oh, look at that. Like, ooh, my menu is here, my header is here, my main content is here, and then I have this footer down here. And all is like nice and clean and well separated because it's different documents under one URL. That was a little weird, right? That wasn't fantastic, but that was what we did. So who here has used frame sets in their life? Who here is still doing it? Yeah, that's, times change. But this was really interesting, right? We had 2, or actually 3, if you count CSS at that point, 3 different ways of doing layouts, and we experimented and we built stuff, and we figured out that some of them don't work really well. We also figured out that making rich content on the web is not always easy. So we figured out, hey, we have this amazing technology that is super hot and everyone wants to get a piece. And even universities are picking it up now to teach their students programming. And this technology was called Java, and everyone's like, oh, wow, that's amazing, and it runs in my browser, that's awesome. Have you tried running Java applets recently in your browser? Try that on your phone. As in like not applications. In your browser on your phone. That's a tricky one, isn't it? But it gave us fantastic, nice like chat tools and office tools and whatnot. So developers could now build once and run anywhere, right? Including the web. That was great. We also came up with the idea we should make the web more strict. Because, you know, HTML is messy and the browser is very forgiving. Maybe we want the browser to not be forgiving. Maybe we want to blame the developers who are screwing it up. Maybe we want to give the developers full control and a very strict spec because that makes everything easier. Except that happened. So that was XHTML, and it gave us these wonderful, wonderful error pages. If there's some mistake somewhere, the user sees nothing, and that's not good. So we didn't really continue doing that, did we? So what do all these things have in common? I mean, the websites in the 90s were a wild place, right? I mean, we experimented with so many things, and you probably had like a GeoCities page, and you probably had like blinking GIFs and stuff on your website, because that was the thing to do, right? The more moving stuff, the more blinking stuff, the better. We want rich content. We always had wanted rich content, and we had a few ideas for rich content, like Flash, or Java, or Silverlight, or Nathel, or whatever the thing from Google was called. They all have done a big impact. Like, they tried their best to make the web a richer and more interesting place. So we wanted the web to be an application platform. We wanted it real bad to be capable, to be more capable than what it was. The problem with all these ideas, the thread that runs through all of these things, is that they worked on the web. So the web was a container, was a dumb container that we didn't care about. We didn't look at. We didn't understand how the web worked. We just needed to know how to write Java or Flash ActionScript. We just built things in an isolated world, like us developers just looking into Adobe Air or Flash or Java IDE and building these fantastic applications. And we're like, look how clean the code is, look how great this works. And then there's this dumb transfer mechanism that's called HTTP and this dumb thing that we embedded into that's called HTML, whatever. We just put it on the web. None of it worked with the web. Because what sets the web apart from mobile platforms are a few very important characteristics. There's no single one player that controls it. I can't stop you from making a website. You don't have to pay me any fees. I don't have to give you my okay. If I am your domain registrar and I disagree with what you're doing, you just go somewhere else, have a domain somewhere else. Or don't have a domain. Just put the server online somewhere and just tell people the IP address. That's not fantastic, but that works, right? And if your internet service provider doesn't allow me to watch a specific video on a specific website, I can swap out my internet service provider or go to another country if I have to. There are always these forces that try to centralize the web, that try to put it under control. And it's really, really hard to do so because the technologies are open, they are standards. And that's something, we see what happens when standards disappear or do not succeed in the market. The messenger market is one of these markets where standards didn't really take off. We had IRC, we had news groups, we had IRC news groups, what is the other thing? Jabber. We had Jabber, we had XMPP. These are open standards. You can basically build your own thing. Who here uses Slack? Who here uses Hangouts? Facebook Messenger? WhatsApp? Telegram? Signal? Threema? Who here uses all of them? Oh, wow, I'm very sorry for you. Isn't that annoying? And I work for a company that is as guilty as the others. We have not only one messenger, no, we have a plenty. And that's all because we couldn't agree on a standard. Somehow, mysteriously, we did make that happen on the web. So we have open standards that if you don't like how a browser works, you can fork a browser that is open source and basically try to get a community around it and build it your own. It's hard, but it can be done. And luckily we don't do it because basically the browsers that we've got are more or less taking care of what we need to fulfill our needs on the web. Now, all these technologies completely ignored this wild consensus system, this wild open standards, and the possibility to interoperate between different parties. I can use a browser from Microsoft to access a website that is built with a JavaScript library from Facebook that pulls an API that is running on AWS. None of this matters to the web user. They just put in a URL and they get all this content. There's no one who can gatekeep that easily. And that's a very, very important factor. So that makes me think, if this is a thing and we need to make sure that we understand the platform that we work with, and we need to understand the open and shared principles and the principle of resilience. Why did CSS evolve the way it did? Why did HTML evolve the way it did? Why did JavaScript evolve the way it did? Well, they all needed to make sure that they are as resilient as possible. And sometimes resilience was the main priority in the case of HTML and CSS, and sometimes it wasn't. It was an afterthought. Such as an imperative language cannot really be that resilient. There's only so much resiliency you can build into these languages. So that makes me wonder, how are we doing in terms of JavaScript? What does modern JavaScript development look like? And is it still in line with how the web platform should work and how we should be treating the web platform? And that's a hard question, I believe. I think it's very, very important that we have JavaScript and that we use it efficiently and effectively. JavaScript gives a lot of power to us developers. If there's something that the browsers don't have yet, because browser processes take longer, we have multiple companies that have to agree on things and they have to work in a way that works for older versions of the browsers that we've got as well. And we can't break websites, right? The web is gigantic. If we do something that impacts, let's say, 5% of the web, then it means it impacts a lot of people, a lot of websites. Many of them are no longer maintained, but still important and valuable, right? And unfortunately, a lot of the things that we take for granted aren't really just there. They're not just magically happening. Who here uses Can I Use? Who here pays for it? They have a Patreon. Can I Use matters to us developers, but who's funding it? Where does the money come from? Right? So it's great that we have JavaScript that allows us to experiment with whatever we need to experiment with, while the other people in the platform and like companies like Microsoft, Apple, Google, and others are basically working, Mozilla, are basically working on making standards that are solid. We need to implement new stuff. We need to move the platform forward, because it's important to have new things on the web to keep up with other platforms, right? But that doesn't mean that we should just discard it and just go well, then we write everything in JavaScript and it'll be fine. And we put it in this dumb container that is HTML. And this dumb container is transferred over this dumb mechanism called HTTP. We don't care about it. I don't know about it. I give zero craps about it. I just write my JavaScript in my little clean, lovely code world. I don't think that works. So let's take a closer look. So when Ajax came about, a few browser vendors had some ideas on how it should work. So if I wanted to do an XML HTTP request, I wanted to fetch some data from somewhere, I would have to write this kind of code. I would start with, okay, so I use the web platform, but some parts of the web platform disagree. And even that part of the web platform that disagrees with itself. So yeah, and then if that's it, then that's it. Then there's not that much that I can do. That's very unfortunate. So this was how the web platform looked like. This was what we had. And I think Ajax is not a bad thing. It's a great technology to load things asynchronously in the background and do interesting work and have live updating applications and things like that. We all are used to this now. If I type into a Google Doc and someone else types in, I see that. That is because data is constantly being exchanged in the background, probably with WebSockets or something, but that doesn't matter. It's basically a new technology was added to the web platform, or even an experiment was added before it was a web platform, because I wouldn't call this the web platform at that point. But I had to deal with this kind of stuff as a developer. That wasn't exactly nice. So luckily, someone came up with the idea of abstracting away a lot of the warts and nuts and bolts of the web platform. So I could finally actually be productive. I could just go okay, I want to get this thing, and if it comes back, I'll be fine. If it fails, well then, well, whatever. And under the hood, it does all the hard work of figuring out how to do this. This abstraction, back in 2005, 6-ish, was a fantastic abstraction. I'm really happy that we've got it, because it made me a lot more productive for quite a while, until the browsers caught up. We now have fetch. So why would I lug around this gigantic piece of code constantly for no benefit than just nostalgia? And we built amazing stuff with technologies like this. So we have this card, so I can click on things and put them into my card and then buy them. And And then things got messy, right? So I have a button, I click on that button, then I add something to a list, and then when I am on the list, I can use a form that takes data from the list, and then this form has a button, and then when I click that button, I basically like paste somewhere in an iframe or whatever, and then it clears the list. And 5 days later, this is what happens, right? My application tends to grow quite quickly. So we figured, oh, so all this JavaScript and all the abstractions are nice. Like we had mess beforehand, and then we put an abstraction in place. So maybe we need another abstraction. And so we figured we really need another abstraction because the iPhone just made the web weird, because now I have it on this tiny device and I can be anywhere. So I want to make sure that I have an application that works in all these factors, and I can't just use a plugin like Flash or Java or something. So I need to figure out how to structure my applications differently. I need an abstraction that we are not having on the web platform. So everyone was like, you know, with the new app thing, the web is dead, and I don't think that happened. I think we are still pretty much on the web these days, and that's probably thanks to another experimentation that happened around the time, which is Backbone. If you don't recognize that logo, that is perfectly fine. Backbone came up with this idea of saying like, so, okay, we need another abstraction that we're not having, so where can we get inspiration for building more complex, larger code bases? Well, in the backend, we're doing that. We have like lots of code, and it's like complicated, and we need to structure it in some way. So we came up with this fantastic idea of having like a structure that makes our code a little cleaner, and that was the model view controller application. So basically, architecture. So basically, here we split up our code in different blocks and parts, and these parts communicate and work together with each other, and they work with our core business logic, and then we have a more structured approach. And Backbone was one of the first to do that. Many others came very quickly. So like there was Ember and Sprout Core and I don't know, Angular, Knockout, whatever, what do you know? And then like more things came out. So yeah, this was 2010, and we're like, oh my God. These tools are amazing, but as more and more tools came, it's like having a party, right? You invite 5 of your friends, and you're like, we're gonna have a great evening, and then it rings at the door, and like the first friend actually brings 2 more friends that you didn't expect. So like, yeah, come on in, this is cool, this is fun, this is good. The next friend comes with 5 more friends, and you're like, yeah, no, cool, we'll just get like, I don't know, I'll just like run and get more beers from the shop around the corner, and like we're gonna order more pizza, and this is cool, this is fun. And then the next friend comes with 10 more friends, and you're like, okay, hi, all right. And then like you go fetch those beers, and you come back, and you can't get into the flat anymore because there's like 100 people dancing and partying. And like, who are all these people? And then like someone randomly turns around and goes like, well, you know, I know that guy over there that you actually don't know, and he just said it's fine to pop by partying. Woo, who are you? And I'm like, this is my flat. So this is the situation that we got ourselves into. It's not necessarily a bad thing, because a lot of experimentation happened, and I think this experimentation was great because it gave us so many things to pick from, so many tools to pick from. We didn't have to pick, right? We could just like pick one tool that we're happy with and build our stuff with it effectively. But we got overwhelmed by the fact that like new stuff came in. And eventually the ecosystem became quite complicated. A lot of people said, oh, you know, JavaScript fatigue, framework fatigue. I don't want to learn this new thing anymore. I can't keep up with the speed of things evolving. There's JavaScript frameworks that are like, I had milk in my fridge that lived longer than some of these JavaScript projects. Right? So this was complex, and this was overwhelming, and this was probably annoying. But that's not because of the experimentation. I think all of this is good. We tried things, and we figured out what worked and what didn't work so well. The problem is that like it feels like this, right? There's something happening around us, and it's just so hard to not look at it. It's so hard to just go on with your business, to just keep working with what you've got, rather than looking for the newest, shiniest tool. It's like a little dog going like, oh, squirrel, 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 oh my God, I need to, you know, chase the squirrel, oh my God, food, excellent, food, here's food, that's great, I'm food, oh, my friend is there, friend, oh my God, a ball, a tennis ball, right? Like, we are basically attention-driven. And that's just something that is very deeply ingrained in our psyche. And we have to deal with this ourselves. And this can lead to fatigue, because if you get so much input, if you get so much happening around in the ecosystem, you might think that you have to know everything and then you have to go down every route. And I think that's not true. And we have to be very conscious about this. We have to ask ourselves, what are the things that we deeply care about? And I can't give that answer for everyone, because I think everyone has to find that answer for themselves. For me, I care about making the things that I build accessible to as many people as possible. That's what I care about. That's why I build on the web and not on macOS, not on Windows, not on Linux. Linux is not accessible to everyone. Sure, you can download it for free, but good luck like getting your grandpa to run a kernel build every couple of days. That's just not going to happen, right? So you have to find out what you value, and then you have to find the tools to support your values. And this can sometimes be quite tricky, because things can get interesting, but not good. This is exciting, look at that. Oh my goodness, what the hell? Okay, what's happening next? Okay, boil, boil, boil. Okay, now boiling. What? Okay. Right. Oh no, uh-oh. Oh, oh wow, okay. What are we trying to accomplish at this point? I don't know, but it's fascinating, isn't it? Nice! This is awesome. This is great. So a lot of times when we see these new tools coming out, and I'm really happy about it, that like there is always someone who's really excited about the new tool that came out. And I was that person, I am that person. When new tools come out that support what I'm trying to build, I'm really excited. But there is a certain chance that we are like, ooh, but this is an interesting challenge, this is an interesting problem, let's build this. Oh, this is a puzzle, I want to solve this puzzle. This is interesting, this is exciting. But then we forget what we're actually trying to do. All of this is freaking exciting. And if I would be shown this, I'd be like, wow, this is amazing. Does that mean that tomorrow I'll build the same thing at my desk to switch the pages of a newspaper? Maybe not. And I wonder how often you can. I mean, it's a MacBook, but if it's a 2017 or 18 MacBook, I'm not sure how often you can make that happen, like it falls down and like works afterwards. I don't know. So yeah, don't get excited with things. I mean, do get excited with things. No, don't get me wrong. Get excited. But always ask yourself, does this actually solve the problem I'm trying to solve here? Or is this a distraction? Is this something that makes me excited but doesn't actually help me fix what I'm trying to fix here, or solve the problem I'm trying to solve? So you need to focus on what you're trying to do. If I'm trying to give information about something to as many people as possible, but this information only updates like once or twice a week or something, or it's a blog and only like someone uploads something, no one logs in or anything, it's a very static thing, then sure, that's a perfect opportunity to like try this new tool that you've never tried before. But if it like does complicated things and breaks in half of the browsers, then that's maybe not the best way, because I want to get this information that I share to as many people as possible. So maybe a static site generator is a good idea. It doesn't mean that you don't use JavaScript. You can look at things like Gatsby or something, or Jekyll if you're into the Ruby things, or Hugo if you're into Golang, whatever. There's plenty of tools available to pick from. Pick the one that you like working with, that solves your problems and generates the simplest possible output, the simplest possible solution to solve the problem. Does that mean that I'm saying you should just write HTML and JavaScript and CSS and like use the JavaScript as a progressive enhancement? No. If I'm building a chat app, or if I'm building a social platform where people are like interacting really quickly with each other, or play games or something, try doing that with HTML and CSS. You can, but your CSS is probably going to be quite complex. And that's not necessarily what you want to build. So JavaScript can be the right tool for the job. And then you can pick whatever framework you think solves the problem best and works best with what you've got. But don't get excited with overly complex solutions. It is interesting. I love it when I hear talks about it. Like people are like, okay, so I figured there's this one group of people who built a website that is as accessible as possible. That was their goal. So you can send a fax to a specific number, and they fax the website back. Right? And they have like built specific tooling for that. They have like a server that accepts fax, that accepts, they have like something that accepts postcard, because they have found like a service that translates postcards into email, and then they use the emails that come in to pass for the address of the person, and then they send they print the website and send it to you via posta. And I love that. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. Would I build my websites like that? Hell no. Not very useful, not very efficient. But it's really, really interesting. And so like, enjoy all the interesting things you see online. Read all the fantastic blog posts. But keep asking yourself, what are the values that I hold? What are the goals that I'm trying to accomplish? Is this tool going to help me, or is this tool going to hurt me? And I think an important step for that is to always start with the user. Do not start with yourself. I've heard it a lot of times, like, this tool is fantastic, comma, because it makes me really productive. And I think that's important, that matters. Developer time is expensive. But you know what else is expensive and actually can have quite big consequences? That's the user time. If we are building a website for social services to get the life support that people with disabilities need to sustain, to live on, right? So there might be a blind user, there might be someone in a wheelchair, there might be someone who can't use a mouse properly or has Parkinson's, so like they keep shaking. If our website isn't working for them to apply for the money they need to live, we have failed them. We have hurt lives. And that's something that we need to keep in mind. Who are we building for? There's other talks, and I think Christian is probably also going to go into that a little more at the end keynote. But I think it's very important to understand these constraints. Sure, if you're building a gaming website, you don't necessarily have to deal with all this. But even if you're just building an online shop, who are you excluding? Who are the users that can't use it? Have you ever tried to actually put your phone out and like go to a place where you have really bad reception and you only get like Edge or something? The website you built, to use Marie Kondo, does it spark joy? Right? Do you think this is usable? If you don't think this is usable, you might go like, well, none of our users is on this kind of connection. None of our users is using this on a mobile phone. You don't know that. And I have seen that at our products as well, where I filed bugs to our internal product teams because like some product, I was on the road in China. And you know how Chinese internet and the Western internet is an interesting story. So I was in China and I was at an airport and I needed to get directions. That was rough. That wasn't good. And I had the map offline and it was still rough. And I'm like, has anyone even considered this use case? And then they're like, well, you know, China's not one of our markets. I'm like, cool. But do you know where I grew up? And they're like, no. I'm like, in rural Germany, northern Germany. I have a very similar internet connection there. So yeah, how about the German market? And they're like, well, the German market, that's the market that we care about. I'm like, but your product doesn't say so. And then you talk to the developers and they're like, well, we are really efficient and you know, this framework, that's fantastic and it does stuff. It's not even a web product that I'm talking about. So like, you know, it does amazing things and woo. And I'm like, that's cool, but it is really, really slow on older machines. Consider these kind of things. It's very important to start with the user, not yourself. You are secondary. The W3C has like a principle for web platform decisions. The needs of the user are the most important thing because there's billions and billions of users and using billions and billions of websites every day, every moment on a variety of devices and internet connections. So whatever they need is the most important thing. And that's more important than what developers need. But what developers need is still more important than the people who make the standards. Because we are building things with the standards. So if the standards don't make sense to us, we need to get into the discussion, and we can. There's GitHub for pretty much every spec that is developed. You can go there and ask questions in the issues. You can review the spec and you can ask questions, make suggestions, clarify problems with it, or like speak up and say like, this is interesting, but it doesn't help me. The way you're building it doesn't help me. I want you to help me. They should take that into account, and they are. They are looking for developer feedback. There is not very much developer feedback. We need to chime in. We developers need to chime in. We need to be in these discussions. We need to say, this is an interesting standards proposal, but I can't use it because it would be able to use it if, and then the discussion happens, and this can be really fruitful. And you don't have to like do all the discussion, you just have to get the ball rolling. Other people will probably think the same, and if they see that you voice that concern, they might chime in, and they might go like, yeah, I'm with that person, we need to fix this. Because the developer needs are more important than the standards writers' needs. But we are not as important as users. The users are still more important. So if users raise concerns, or usability testing raises concerns about how our product works for users, that is the same situation. We need to get that fixed. If that means changing our tools, that means changing our tools. You don't want to be the one-trick pony, right? You don't, if the only tool you've got is a hammer and everything looks like a nail, you're not going to have a good time like cutting down a tree. Cutting down a tree with a hammer is probably possible. Good job, but why? We shouldn't fall for that. And we see that with examples like this. You know, I've discussed this in my earlier talk as well. If the thing I'm trying to do is I try to give pictures to my users, I should give them these pictures as quickly as possible. If that means that I need to change my code, so be it, because it's my frickin' job. Right? I get paid to write code. Yes, this is more effort for me. Yes, this is better for the user. Yes, I'm going to do that. And there's things like, what does my site cost? You can put in your URLs, and you can see how much of the monthly income across the world your website costs. And sometimes I build websites that cost like 20% of the monthly income of someone, or like 10% of the daily income, which means that they have to switch between, do I buy this food or do I go to his website? That's not good. That's not a decision I want them to make that clearly. So I try to push. It's hard. I'm not going to lie to you. It's hard. But we need everyone to face these problems, to voice these problems to the people who make the standards, who make the technologies, who make the frameworks that we are using, to understand these issues and to fix them. Because together we are much, much smarter than any of us alone. So as long as we come together as a community, and that's why I love this community, you're coming together as a community here today, do something about it, all right? And also keep pushing for simpler tools. If there's something that I can do to just like using a static site generator, I shall do it. Oh, I need some more dynamic elements. Well, then maybe I add some widgets using JavaScript. Maybe I switch my static site generator to something that has like a little more dynamic stuff. Or maybe, I don't know, I use a full-blown framework. Who knows? You can make these decisions. You are smart. And always favor resilience. If my tool depends on a bunch of stuff that I don't understand, I'm not sure if that's a good situation to be in. You should understand the things that you're using and the things you use in order to understand what you're building upon. What are the design decisions? Every single tool comes with a design decision, with multiple design decisions that led to the way the tool is. You should understand these design decisions. That doesn't mean that you basically can now like quit your job and like learn stuff for the next 6 months, but basically at least make yourself familiar with what's happening in these tools. You don't have to dig very deep. It's just like, so I was wondering, what does this file in my repository do? Find that out today, tomorrow, doesn't matter, Monday. Every day, find out a little more about the things that you're using. Small steps, baby steps. Build websites, make them cool, and then go like, but what does this actually do? Find out one thing every day or every week, depending on how much you can bother with, and you'll become a better developer. You will become a better citizen of the web. And maybe in 2, 3, 4 months, you stand on a stage like this and tell people about the things you found, because maybe they surprised you. If they surprised you, if you didn't know them beforehand, there will be people in this audience who do not know that thing. I'm absolutely 100% sure if I go to any one of you and ask you, what have you worked with the last week or the last month? There will be a thing, at least one thing that I didn't know with every single one of you. You started yesterday with your first development job and like you basically are doing, I don't know, Coursera courses or something. Cool. You still might know something or might know something outside of development that I don't know. So we can all learn from each other, and it's very important to share these things and always look for resilient tools, for tools that if they break in a nice way. And that starts by also challenging the assumptions we do. If I'm writing backend code, I know what kind of development machine I have. I know what the machine is going to be like that it runs on. I more or less can rely on network connections. My server probably has a pretty good uplink. My server probably has pretty good specs. I have enough memory and stuff. I have packages and libraries that I can install. I have files and databases that I can rely on to be there. But in the front-end land, you don't know that. I don't know what the screen size is going to be. I don't know if colors are supported. My phone has a mode that gives me more battery lifetime by disabling colors. If all you do is like color-based, I'll be like, cool, fuck that, right? You don't know the network speed, you don't know anything. So make sure that you leverage what the browser gives you, because actually the browser gives you a bunch of stuff. HTML starts rendering as it is received. That's different from JavaScript that needs to be downloaded at whole and then like parsed and executed. It also tries to figure out which resources are how important, so that even if the network is really slow or spotty, it gets you the most important resources first. It parses CSS as well as HTML. If there's an error in it, it'll figure it out. It'll skip it or whatever, but it's not going to break and give you an error message. And it has built-in accessibility features for people who are needing assistive technology. And that can be more people than you think. If you broke your arm and can't use your mouse, you might just use the keyboard to navigate the web. Try that for a week. It's going to be fun. We also now have a component system. If the browser that you target does not have one, then you can hopefully rely on the one that your framework comes with. But basically, we are getting there. The web platform is building new stuff in. CSS Grid has launched in all the major browsers. So we have a lot of cool things that we can rely on. And what I'd like to say is, the experiments and tooling that we've got improve the platform. All the frameworks that we've seen, like be it Ember, Sprout Core, Knockout, Vue, whatever, they all improve because they add new features and they like try new things and they try things differently, and I get to pick if that's the way that I want to go down with or if I want another way. But as these experiments succeed and as we understand, okay, this is a good thing, all the frameworks these days have components. Components are probably a good thing. So how about we put some time into making web components usable and great? We are getting there. We might not be 100%, but we are getting there. So like these experiments become parts of the foundation that we work with, of the web platform. The browser deals with this stuff. We don't have to deal with this stuff. That's good news. All right? So keep pushing, keep experimenting, keep building new things, but don't leave your users behind. That's not okay. Thank you very much.